This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Game plan. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. President-elect Donald Trump huddles tomorrow with Senate Republicans on Capitol Hill to lay out his MAGA agenda. Border security will be priority number one when Trump assumes office in less than 2 weeks. Confirmation hearings for Trump's cabinet picks get underway next week. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
The confirmations, do them now, do them quick. Get them all done in January, February. We need our team on the field.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune predicts most, but not all, the president's picks will be confirmed.
I suspect a lot of them will get through. All of them remains to be seen.
Once in office, Trump's vowing to overturn President Biden's ban on offshore oil and gas drilling. Yesterday, Biden signed an executive order prohibiting drilling in 625 million acres of ocean on both the east and west coast.
It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately. What's he doing? Why is he doing it? We have oil and gas at a level that nobody else has, and we're going to take advantage of it.
Brian Brenberg at Fox Business on why he thinks Biden issued such a decree.
He hates the fact that part of the reason he lost this election is because Donald Trump said we're going to drill. And so out of spite, I guess, or out of total callous disregard for Americans, he wants to take all this, and it's not just he takes it off for a little while. This is like a permanent ban on all of this drilling.
Experts say reversing Biden's executive order will likely require an act of Congress. The Biden administration today moved nearly a dozen detainees from Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to the country of Oman. 2 of the Yemeni men were bodyguards for Osama bin Laden. They were captured on battlefields after 9/11. This move today means there are just 15 prisoners left at Gitmo, the fewest since that military prison opened in 2002. The man who gave us Facebook wants to restore free speech on social media. Reporter Cami McCormick has that story.
Mark Zuckerberg said in a post that there will be a change in how content is monitored.
We're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the U.S.
He said that will empower users to decide when a post is intentionally misleading or needs more context, and that allows for a broader range of perspectives.
Meta's also bringing back political content and getting rid of restrictions on topics like immigration or gender. 7 deaths now blamed on the blockbuster storm spanning more than 24 states from the Midwest to the Northeast. Thousands of flights have been canceled. Hundreds of thousands of homes are powerless. And to add insult to injury, the coldest air in more than a year has now enveloped the entire continental U.S.
This persistent low is going to keep this unseasonably cold weather for the next few weeks. In fact, 250 million of us are at freezing or below. The only state without freezing temperatures, Hawaii, at this point.
Today's show meteorologist Al Roker. The death toll's risen to nearly 100 now after that powerful earthquake struck a remote region of Tibet in southwest China. Reporter Janice Mackey-Freyer.
This was the most powerful recorded quake in years in that area of the Himalayas, and a rescue operation is now underway in freezing cold conditions. The epicenter of the quake that the USGS measured at magnitude 7.1 was located 50 miles from Mount Everest and also near one of Tibet's holiest cities.
The Chinese military's employed drones to try and find survivors buried in the rubble. The BBC's Laura Westbrook.
Video on Chinese state media from the area showed hundreds of homes had collapsed and debris in the roads, making it hard for people to get around.
The quake was felt as far away as India and Bangladesh. The first person ever to die of bird flu in this country, an elderly man with a history of health problems. He was from Louisiana and had been in contact with dead birds in a backyard flock. CBS medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder.
The persons who are currently at highest risk for infection include people who work with dairy cattle, poultry, or wild birds, and they're generally younger and healthier than the Louisiana case who died.
Dr. John Torres at NBC.
There's 4 stages, basically, if you think about it. There's bird to bird, which is stage 1. Stage 2 is bird to other animals, dairy cows, for example. Stage 3 is animals to humans, and that's where we are right now. And the one we get concerned with is when it starts going human to human. Stage 4, we haven't gotten to that stage yet.
Nationwide, there are 66 confirmed cases of bird flu in people. New questions about the security situation in New Orleans. With Mardi Gras and the Super Bowl set to get underway there soon, correspondent Omar Villafranca.
More than 5 years before Shamsuddin Jabbar tore a path of carnage through Bourbon Street, a confidential report distributed to officials in New Orleans warned that a vehicular terrorist attack was, quote, highly possible.
A system of retractable barriers known as bollards were not working the morning of the truck attack. 14 were killed, dozens more hurt when Jabbar turned his truck into a weapon on New Year's Day. The illegal immigrant accused of setting a woman on fire on a New York City subway and then watching her burn, that man is being arraigned today on first-degree murder charges. The Guatemalan was deported from this country back in 2018 before illegally making his way back in. Manhattan Judge Juan Merchan refusing to dismiss sentencing for President-elect Trump. He'll do that on Friday for Trump's hush money conviction. Reporter Katrina Kaufman.
Merchan has now said that he is denying Trump's request to stay the sentencing, now set for January 10th in the morning, but Trump has made it clear that he is going to use every avenue possible to try and prevent the sentencing from happening.
Critics contend Merchan's motives are purely political, since he does not intend to dole out any prison time or even probation.
Once he sentences the president-elect, he will technically be a convicted felon, and that will become the new mantra, the soundbite going into the inauguration, that this is history being made, even though the president-elect has had no opportunity to appeal this case.
Legal scholar Jonathan Turley. And a week-long funeral procession for former President Jimmy Carter moves tonight from Plains, Georgia, to the nation's capital.
Members of the public will be able to pay their respects to President Carter inside the Capitol Rotunda, Royal Lion State, starting today. The public viewing, which opens at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, will last until Thursday, when the body of the nation's 39th president will be taken to Washington National Cathedral for a funeral service. The last former president to Lion State was George H.W. Bush in 2018.
Reporter Ryan Schmelz on Capitol Hill. Still to come on the Noon Report for Tuesday, expanding the child tax credit, remembering New York's first female lieutenant governor, and the PA Farm Show mullet contest.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Williams. More wintry weather lies ahead. I'll have forecast details in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, let's check the stories that are making news this Tuesday afternoon all across New York and Pennsylvania. The 2025 legislative session opened today in Harrisburg. The first item of business is to elect new leaders. Pro-family forces keeping a close eye this year on efforts to legalize recreational marijuana. Republicans control the state Senate. Democrats rule the roost in the House and the governor's office. New York Governor Kathy Hochul wants to make raising a family less of a financial strain in the Empire State. She's proposed boosting the child tax credit to $1,000 for kids under 4. Families with children ages 4 to 16 would get $500 back from the government.
I want to support families, especially in those earliest years when you're not getting enough sleep at night. You're stressed out. But family by family, child by child, community by community, we will make this place better and more livable and more affordable.
Experts say expanding the child tax credit would benefit more than 1.5 million families and drop the overall child poverty rate by 8%. The first woman to serve as lieutenant governor of New York was laid to rest Monday. 92-year-old Mary Ann Krupczak was eulogized at St. Francis de Sales Church in Geneva. Krupczak served in the administration of Governor Hugh Carey back in the 1970s. For 6 years now, New York has granted driver's licenses to undocumented migrants. The so-called green light law prevents ICE from accessing the DMV records of these illegal immigrants. State Senator Rob Ortt says that needs to change.
You're making the job of law enforcement less safe, and you're doing so for one purpose, and that is to protect people in the country illegally.
Southern Tier Congressman Nick Langworthy warns if New York does not play ball with the federal government, New York could lose federal funding.
I don't know what it has got to be to make Kathy Hochul and the officials in Albany to wake up that we've got a real crisis on our hands.
Incoming border czar and upstate New York native Tom Homan has vowed to deport dangerous illegals as soon as the Trump administration takes over. Once again, Senator Rob Ortt.
All we're asking for, all Homan is asking for, is for the state of New York to allow local law enforcement to work with federal law enforcement, federal immigration authorities. That's it. That should not be a big ask, but in 2025, state of New York, it is.
According to the Center for Migration Studies, New York is now home to more than 670,000 undocumented migrants. The Pennsylvania State Police is looking to hire a few good men and women. It's opened up the 2025 hiring cycle for new cadets. Applicants must have a high school diploma or a GED. A college degree is no longer necessary. Background checks are required, and so too is a written exam. Applications must be received no later than March 31st. Pennsylvania State Senator Michelle Brooks is sponsoring a bill to bring back whole milk to school lunch programs. Family Life's Brian Query.
The proposal touts the benefits of whole milk, including omega-3 acids, which have been linked to many health benefits. The Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010 put restrictive regulations on the consumption of whole milk in schools, and statistics show that within the first 2 years of that legislation, 1.2 million fewer students drank milk with their lunch. Pennsylvania is number 7 in milk production in the country, and the industry supports 52,000 jobs in the Commonwealth. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Sharpshooters are spreading out across Syracuse, New York this week for the annual deer culling program. Any shooting must be done at night, and bait sites must be at least 500 feet from occupied buildings. This deer management program in the Salt City first began in 2019. Officials stress an overpopulation of deer poses a public health risk, so they're thinning out the herds. Sports news next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. J.J. Peterka, that's the name on the lips of Buffalo Sabre fans. He gave the home crowd a lot to cheer about last night. Buffalo winning a thrilling 4-3 shootout over the Washington Capitals. Peterka had a goal and an assist, and then the game winner in the shootout. Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck also found the back of the net as Buffalo snapped a 3-game losing streak. Montreal, Colorado, and New Jersey, your other winners on the ice. To the NBA at Madison Square Garden, both Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson scored 24 points. Josh Hart had a double-double with 15 points and 14 boards. But all of that wasn't enough. The Knicks fell to the Magic 103-94. In Brooklyn, the Nets lost a 113-99 decision to the Pacers. With their third straight win, Indiana now over the 500 mark with a 19-18 record. Brooklyn falls to 13-23. In Philly, the Sixers could not handle the Suns. Phoenix knocked them off 109-99 despite a 31-point performance by Tyrese Maxey. Maxey also dished out 10 assists. Kelly Oubre Jr. had a double-double of his own, scoring 26 and grabbing 11 rebounds. Philadelphia now 14-20 on the season. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy Mann, and still to come on the Noon Report, earthquake in the shadow of Everest. DEI is out at McDonald's. Transgender indoctrination's in at preschool.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, the rough start to 2025 did not actually start on January the 1st. On New Year's Day, in the early morning hours, a U.S. Army veteran plowed a truck into a crowd in New Orleans in a terrorist attack that was done in the name of the Islamic State. Just a few hours later, pro-Palestinian demonstrators blocked 6th Avenue in New York, calling to globalize the Intifada. And across the Atlantic, a report released describing so-called Muslim grooming gangs who preyed on lower-class white girls in Britain, although grooming is far too mild of a descriptor for what the report actually claimed. Apparently, since 2000, about 250,000 British girls have been groomed, drugged, and sexually assaulted. Those who reported their assaults were often blamed or ignored. Fathers who attempted to rescue their daughters were at times arrested. People who tried to expose the behavior were imprisoned. Apparently, officials were afraid of being labeled racist or being accused of inciting racial tension or racial violence. So they were more fearful of being insensitive than they were committed to protecting girls from sexual abuse and exploitation. Across Europe, during the holidays, Christmas markets were attacked and disrupted by Muslim demonstrations. In many of these European cities, Muslims regularly pray publicly in areas and acts that are designed to cause maximum disturbance. This is something rare in Islamic nations and indicates the intent of Muslims there to claim new territory as their own. And on New Year's Day, immigrants, mostly Muslim, rioted in Brussels and in Berlin and in other cities as well. We should also mention that in what's become a terrible tradition on holy days in that nation, Christians in Nigeria again suffered a series of murders attack over Christmas at the hands of Islamic Fulani herdsmen and ISIS-related groups. According to a report from Open Doors, at least 25 were killed, some while returning from a Christmas Day church service. Also, 21 Christians were killed in Christmas-tide attacks in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, of course, most Muslims around the world are peaceful and condemn such attacks in the name of their faith. However, it's important to know that a significant percentage of Muslims around the world are what could be called Islamist. Islamists believe Islam is destined to rule the world, and they often think that jihad is how this domination will happen. It's also important to note that Islamism is not an aberrant form of Islam, as is often claimed. In view of Islam's history, Islamists more closely reflect the life of Muhammad and the history of Islam than is often acknowledged. Muhammad, a merchant turned religious leader turned warlord, initially attempted to convert the surrounding Arabs by preaching to them, but that failed. So instead, he turned to raiding and sought conversions by military conquest. As his power expanded and Muhammad's raiding extended into Persia and the Byzantine Empire, he allowed his warriors to take non-Muslims as sex slaves. That's similar to what's happened today in Britain. Muhammad's successors also expanded Muslim territory by conquest. In fact, conquest is the primary means by which Islam has spread across the world. Now, many critics and scholars today suggest that what Islam needs is a reformation, much like what happened in the 16th century within Christianity. However, arguably, Islamism is that reformation. It is the return to the authoritative sources of Islam, to the literal reading of the Quran, to an embrace of Sharia law, to an emphasis on the personal example of Muhammad. In short, if Christians are to live well in this cultural moment, we need to understand the worldview of Islam and the difference between personally committed Muslims and a vision of reality that could be called Islamism. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you very much. Outside we go next, a very busy Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Mainly cloudy and cold. Be breaks of sunshine at times in central and eastern Pennsylvania. Elsewhere and otherwise, flurries and local lake snow. A couple inches can accumulate yet in areas southeast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. High temps 20. For tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday, partly cloudy central and eastern Pennsylvania with a flurry. Mostly cloudy with flurries and lake effect snow elsewhere. Several inches accumulating, especially in areas of central New York. Low temps tonight, teens. High temps tomorrow, teens and low 20s, mostly 20s on Thursday.
All right, we're in the thick of it now. Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's what's going on Tuesday, the 7th of January. The first U.S. bird flu death in a human has been reported in a man with a history of health problems in Louisiana. This elderly victim had been hospitalized with severe respiratory symptoms. CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder.
The risk to the general public remains low, but this is a reminder that H5N1 avian flu has the potential to be deadly, particularly among persons who are at higher risk for severe disease.
There are 66 confirmed human bird flu cases in this country. A new study suggests a possible link between fluoride exposure and lower IQs in kids. The research published by the American Medical Association is based on dozens of studies conducted outside of this country. NBC's Stephanie Goss.
The lead author telling NBC News there's concern that pregnant women and children are getting fluoride from many sources, including drinking water, and that their total fluoride exposure is too high.
Still, many public health experts support keeping fluoride in drinking water, arguing it helps prevent tooth decay. Dr. Bruce Lanphier is a fluoride critic.
The conclusions are sufficient to raise serious questions about fluoride's toxicity to the developing brain.
Robert Kennedy Jr. recently wrote a social media post that encourages all public water systems remove fluoride. Kennedy is Donald Trump's choice to lead the Health and Human Services Department. McDonald's is scaling back its diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda.
They're here. McDonald's best burgers ever.
McDonald's says it will put an end to some of its diversity efforts at senior leadership levels, citing the Supreme Court decision that banned affirmative action in college admissions. The fast food giant joins other companies doing the same, including Walmart and Harley-Davidson. McDonald's first rolled out its initiatives in 2021, following lawsuits alleging discrimination and sexual harassment.
Reporter Wendy Gillette. Parents at a New York City preschool are demanding answers after a substitute teacher who's transgender read a book about trans inclusivity to 3- and 4-year-olds.
Sadly, this is the kind of thing we have been seeing for the past 4 years from coast to coast, because these activists are determined to get their hands on our children and separate them from their parents. And parents really need to be aware of what is happening in their schools.
Nikki Neely's founder of Parents Defending Education.
In places like New York City, they're absolutely unrepentant about the ideology they're pushing on kids. And I think that's why we've seen over the past several years a turn toward families that have chosen to go to private school, to homeschool.
A new poll from Parents Defending Education finds 74% of parents oppose gender ideology at the elementary school level. At least 7 deaths now blamed on that blockbuster storm spanning 27 states, from the Midwest to the Northeast. Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
Please make sure that your vehicles are prepared, and please make sure that your vehicles are weather ready. Drive slow, be safe, and stay behind the plows.
Meteorologist David Parkinson.
The temperatures are going to be so low in the eastern portion of the United States that the usual salt that you would use, you can't use the normal amount. It's just too cold. And so that's part of the problem, is wherever there is snow, it's not going anywhere.
Thousands of flights have been canceled. Hundreds of thousands of homes still have no power. Nearly 100 people are dead following a 7.1 earthquake in China. It happened in Tibet, high in the Himalayas, 50 miles north of Mount Everest.
The quake struck close to China's border with Nepal, including a holy city for Tibetan Buddhists. Tremors were felt as far as Nepal's capital, Kathmandu, over 200 miles away, where people were seen running from their homes.
Correspondent Alex Jensen says more than 1,000 homes were damaged in the quake. The Chinese military is using drones to try and find survivors underneath the rubble. Congress has certified the November 5th election results, and that paves the way for the inauguration of President-elect Trump in less than 2 weeks. Reporter Ryan Noble.
Vice President Kamala Harris, just a few months removed from her loss in the 2024 election, presiding over a joint session of Congress, shepherding the process to officially certify the win of her former political rival.
America's democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it.
The largely ceremonial proceeding, a stark difference from the violence and chaos of 4 years ago.
Tomorrow, Trump will huddle with Senate Republicans on Capitol Hill to lay out his MAGA agenda. Confirmation hearings for Trump's cabinet picks begin next week. New York City Judge Juan Merchan's denied the president-elect's bid to have his hush money conviction tossed. Correspondent Katrina Kaufman.
He's leaning towards what's called an unconditional unconditional discharge. That means Trump could walk away. There would be no confinement. There would be no fine. There would be no probation. He would be free, although he would still be a convicted felon.
Sentencing is set for Friday. The remains of former President Jimmy Carter are being flown today from his home state of Georgia to Washington, D.C. Jim Krasula reports from Atlanta.
An Air Force plane is set to fly the body of former President Jimmy Carter from nearby Dobbins Air Reserve Base to Joint Base Andrews outside Washington, D.C., ahead of an official state funeral Thursday. The flight has been designated Special Air Mission 39 in honor of the nation's 39th president.
Carter died just before New Year's Day at the age of 100. President Biden visited with the families of the New Year's Day terror attack yesterday in New Orleans.
I know events like this are hard, and the shock and pain is still so very raw. My wife Jill and I are here to stand with you, to grieve with you, pray with you, to let you know you are not alone.
Last Wednesday, a former U.S. Army soldier turned ISIS sympathizer plowed through a crowd on Bourbon Street, killing 14 and injuring dozens more. A new poll today shows history will not be kind to the Biden presidency.
A Gallup poll finds 54% of Americans think the Biden presidency will be remembered as below average or poor. 19% say it's outstanding or above average. It's a net negative of 35% for Biden. That's just above Richard Nixon. Donald Trump's first term ended at negative 4%. JFK tops the Gallup survey with a 68% net positive score. I'm Rory O'Neill.
And starting in March, your credit report will no longer include medical bills. The White House today erased nearly $50 billion in medical debt from the credit scores of 15 million Americans. You're listening to the Noon Report on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Hometown Heroes on Family Life. I'm Mark Webster, and this week's guest is Joanna Myers with Upstate New York's Life Matters Training Center, a pro-life ministry that also prepares fellow Christians to effectively carry on the pro-life cause. How did it come about?
Life Matters was formed in November of 2019 by Steve and Julie Rosati. Julie has had over 2 decades worth of experience in pro-life ministry. She and her husband Steve really had a heart for training the next generation so that the work could continue to get more young Christians involved in active pro-life ministries, training them to know how to have a conversation about life and how to connect that to the gospel, which is the foundation of why we're pro-life and the ultimate way that people will change their mind on abortion and become pro-life is if they are born again. Part of our program is the opportunity for young people, like high school graduates or young adults, to live at the training center for a period of time and be fully immersed in pro-life ministry on a full-time basis.
The organization certainly came to be at a crucial time in the pro-life battle, if you will, here in America, with Roe v. Wade happening. In a way, you could say the front has shifted since that Supreme Court decision.
It really has. Now that Roe was overturned, those who are pro-abortion feel very threatened by pro-lifers and the fact that they might lose their reproductive rights. We also saw that in our last presidential election, how people were beating this drum of, you're going to lose your reproductive rights. And so that has really polarized both sides. What we are attempting to do at Life Matters is train Christians to know the facts about abortion, the problems with it, the trauma that it causes, the other opportunities. Really, there are certain choices that are infinitely better than abortion. We want Christians to understand that and be convinced of that themselves so that they're able to have conversations with people that see it differently. Because when we have conversations, we're talking to a real person who understands things in a certain way and has formed their convictions on why they're pro-abortion. And we see how they've come to that conclusion. And we might say, well, it's completely off base how they came to that conclusion, but they're explaining it to us as one human to another. And it's very hard then for us, having had those conversations, to continue to have this mindset of polarization on the issue, because we're realizing that each individual has a bit of a different perspective, a bit of a different reason for simply just believing the lies that the culture and the media perpetuates about abortion.
There's an old saying that if you want to win some, then be winsome, which seems to apply here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because our ultimate goal is to make abortion unwanted. Making abortion illegal is not going to change hearts. It's probably going to just continue to polarize, because even the thought of it has polarized us so much. So we want people to just not want abortion. And so for people to not want abortion, they have to realize that it's really not a good option. It's really not the best choice. It's not the best choice for the baby, of course, but also for the woman and for the dad and for society as a whole. And that's not the narrative that most people know and believe. As we have these conversations with people, it's essentially evangelizing. We're sharing the good news of life and also the good news of Jesus, because there's lots of opportunities to do that as well. But we're planting seeds to help people also see that we're not the hater Bible beaters that they might think us to be because of how the media portrays pro-lifers. We want to help people to come to that place where they don't want abortion because they realize that it's not a good choice.
That's Joanna Myers with Upstate New York's Life Matters Training Center, a pro-life ministry that also prepares fellow Christians to effectively carry on the pro-life cause. Please join us again next time as we search for your home, your town, your hero. It's Hometown Heroes on Family Life.
All right, great stuff today. Thank you, Mark. Hometown Heroes comes your way Tuesdays during the Noon Report. Now, you can subscribe to, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We will continue under the influence of a big upper-level low-pressure center in the Canadian Maritimes. That'll produce a brisk northwest flow of cold air, and that'll mean more lake snows in the snow belts. Heading toward the weekend, there are signs there may be an East Coast storm to track, although right now it looks like a mist to the east. We'll keep our eyes. Our forecast for this afternoon, mainly cloudy and cold. Be breaks of sunshine at times in central and eastern Pennsylvania. Elsewhere, otherwise, flurries and local lake snow. A couple inches can accumulate yet in areas southeast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. High temps 20s. For tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday, partly cloudy central and eastern Pennsylvania with a flurry. Mostly cloudy with flurries and lake effect snow elsewhere. Several inches accumulating, especially in areas of central New York. Low temps tonight, teens. High temps tomorrow, teens and low 20s, and mostly 20s on Thursday.
All right, Kevin, thank you for that. And finally at noon, the fan favorite mullet competition was held yesterday at the Pennsylvania Farm Show in Harrisburg. More than 80 competitors in 5 different age groups took part in that 2-hour contest. Kelsey Cunningham from Northeastern PA admits this was not what she envisioned for her son, Camden.
Oh, no. So we were actually not a fan of mullets, but his brother chopped his hair 2 years ago. So we gave him some options to cut his hair, and he chose the mullet, and we're like, okay, I guess this is our life now. And then shortly after that, everything mullet started popping up. So it's been a fun ride the whole entire time.
Yeah. Never cutting it off.
Never going to cut it off?
Yes, I want to keep it forever.
Keep it forever, he says. Young Camden talking to Dennis Owens at ABC 27. People from all over the Commonwealth came to witness that hairdo contest. Of course, a mullet is, as they say, business in the front, party in the back. The farm show runs through Saturday in Harrisburg. And that's our world, the world we live in, Tuesday, January 7th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.